Welcome to the Economist in Your Ear podcast. So picture this. A single family trying to merge these, iconic old Hollywood studios, think Warner Bros., those huge lots, with something like TikTok, the world's biggest content recommendation engine. What are they actually buying here? Is it this grand media empire, or maybe just a massive political and regulatory headache?
Yeah, I think it's definitely leaning towards the headache.
Right.
Even if it looks like the empire on the surface, the sheer scale of what the Ellisons, Larry from Oracle, and his son David from Skydance Media are trying to do is, well, it's something we really need to unpack. This isn't just buying companies. It feels like an attempt to reshape who controls American entertainment, information, and maybe even political sway.
Right, and that's exactly what we're aiming for today. We want to look beyond the flashy announcements, the big numbers you see in the headlines, and really analyze these three key deals. Because together, they could put brands like, say, Game of Thrones, CBS News, and TikTok's algorithm all under one family's influence. The goal here is to appreciate the ambition, sure, but more importantly, to really scrutinize the technical, political, and frankly, financial tripwires that maybe aren't getting enough attention. Sources suggest these are being seriously underplayed.
It's the ultimate convergence play, isn't it? They're not just grabbing content libraries. They're trying to buy the actual pipes, both the old school ones and the digital ones that decide who sees what and when.
Okay, let's map this out then. This potential empire seems to stand on three legs, three deals, some done, some still rumored. Pillar one is the done deal. David Ellison's Skydance getting control of Paramount back in August, an $8.4 billion deal, mostly bankrolled by his dad, Larry.
And that deal right out of the gate set a pretty serious political tone. We know it only really went through after Paramount dealt with a major legal headache. The key thing to remember is that the deal only crossed the finish line after Paramount settled this, let's call it a dubious legal complaint from President Trump about a CBS News report.
Wow, okay.
So that tells you immediately politics and news control. They're part of the equation from day one.
That's crucial context. Okay, pillar two, the really big potential deal everyone's talking about. The Ellisons are reportedly making a play for Warner Bros. Discovery. That's a much bigger fish, market cap close to $50 billion.
And WBD is, well, it's kind of in a tough spot, actively looking at ways to break itself up, mainly to get rid of its massive debt load. Makes them vulnerable, perhaps.
If they actually manage to combine those two, Paramount and Warner, that's when things get really seismic in the media world.
Absolutely. But we can't skip pillar three, the pure tech part. TikTok's U.S. business. Oracle's confirmed to be in the mix, part of the group looking to buy the U.S. operations. They were already running Project Texas, handling the data security side.
Right, Project Texas.
So now with this sale potentially going through, Oracle shifts from just being like a vendor ensuring data security to being a part owner with potentially huge structural influence.
Okay, so let's imagine they do manage to combine Paramount and Warner. What does that actually look like? You instantly create this absolute behemoth, right? The analysis suggests they'd have the biggest box office output, recently anyway.
Yeah, the box office numbers are big, but maybe the real power isn't just filling cinema seats anymore. It's more about distribution reach and, crucially, the advertising market.
Ah, okay. Tell me about that.
Well, that's where the numbers start to look, frankly, a bit scary for competitors. A combined Paramount-Warner could control something like 35% of the national TV ad market. 35%. That's way ahead of the next biggest player, Disney, who are around 27%.
Wow.
And then you look at streaming. Paramount Plus and HBO Max together, they'd actually sell more subscriptions in the U.S. than Netflix. So they become a genuine force on pretty much every front.
And woven into all of this is the news control aspect, which feels, uniquely sensitive. We're talking direct ownership of really influential brands, CBS News, CNN, plus this huge sway over how young people get their news, which is increasingly TikTok.
It really does feel like a centralization of information control, maybe unlike anything we've seen in quite a while.
So this brings us right to the clash between the vision and the reality, doesn't it? David Ellison talks about blending the creative heart of Hollywood with the innovative spirit of Silicon Valley. Sounds great. Very aspirational.
It does sound compelling. Use smart tech to push great content. Makes sense on paper.
But isn't that massively underestimating the sheer technical difficulty? I mean, these old Hollywood studios weren't exactly built for the cloud era, were they? Trying to mesh a century-old film library with TikTok's algorithm? It doesn't sound like blending fine wines. It sounds more like jamming square pegs into very specific, very digital round hole.
That's a really good way to put it. We absolutely have to push back on this idea that connecting content libraries to TikTok's algorithm is just, plug and play. It's absolutely not.
Why not? What's the block?
The TikTok deal itself, the term sheet, actually requires the core algorithm to be retrained and run under U.S. control. Verifiably so. You can't just copy it over from ByteDance. And we still don't fully know how tolerant China would ultimately be of that kind of detached structure.
Retrained. How complex is that? Is that like a software patch, or are we talking building something new from the ground up?
Oh, it's an engineering beast.
Yeah.
It'll take years, likely billions, not weeks. Retraining means rebuilding the whole decision-making logic based only on U.S. data, U.S. rules, U.S. content policies. You have to prove it's totally separate from its Chinese roots.
So you need to wall off the data inputs, check the whole data pipeline, rewrite the rules.
Exactly. It's a massive multi-year replatforming job. And any sign that it's not completely separate or that there's interference, that's probably a deal killer for U.S. regulators watching this.
Okay, let's say, hypothetically, they pull off this massive technical feat. The moment it works, don't they just slam right into another wall?
Right.
Regulatory friction specifically, self-preferencing. If they use Oracle tech or this new U.S.-based TikTok algorithm to push, say, clips from the new Game of Thrones prequel over stuff from Netflix or Disney, regulators are going to jump all over that, surely.
Instantly. Think about the EU's Digital Markets Act, the DMA. It specifically targets powerful platforms favoring their own stuff. The U.S. doesn't have that exact law yet, but any obvious self-preferencing like that, it would be antitrust target number one.
And this circles back to Oracle's role in all this, which seems complicated.
Yeah, Oracle is wearing a lot of different hats here. It's the cloud provider for TikTok's U.S. data. It's a huge government contractor handling sensitive federal stuff. And now, potentially, through the Ellison family, it's a part owner of TikTok itself.
So what's the risk there?
Regulators, especially those worried about national security, the CFIUS type reviews, they'll demand total transparency. They'll need proof, actual auditable proof, that the Ellison media companies aren't getting some unfair advantage in search rankings or data access or ad tech just because the family connection exists with the cloud provider. Proving that separation, especially under common ownership, that's incredibly tough.
Okay, let's shift gears from the tech headaches to the more traditional legal and political roadblocks, starting with antitrust. If Paramount does merge with Warner, we go from 5 big legacy studios down to 4. That kind of consolidation usually rings alarm bells, right?
Massive alarm bells. And this is where you see strategic hires like bringing Makan Delrahim, who used to run antitrust under Trump, to Paramount as chief legal officer. Smart move for navigating the process, sure, but it doesn't actually change the market reality.
But isn't that just smart politics? Why would regulators block a deal if, say, Warner Bros. Is drowning into debt anyway? Doesn't a merger help stabilize things?
Because antitrust law is supposed to protect the consumer, not the company's finances. Regulators will look hard at market shares. They'll look at vertical integration, owning both making the shows and distributing them, and how that might harm competitors, especially in those 2 key areas we mentioned. The national TV ad market, where they'd hit 35%, and the market for making premium scripted TV shows, controlling both supply and price there. That's a huge barrier for anyone else trying to compete.
Now, what about the government's specific points of leverage? You mentioned WBD itself doesn't have broadcast stations, so maybe the FCC isn't automatically involved in that specific merger. But Paramount still owns CBS, right, with all those broadcast licenses?
And that's the government's ultimate bargaining chip, you could say. The FCC controls who gets to use the public airwaves. And that precedent we talked about earlier, how the FCC approval for the Paramount deal seemed to line up neatly with settling that Trump lawsuit over CBS News that just signals constant political risk around news independence.
So the FCC remains a powerful player here, regardless of the specific deal structure.
Absolutely. When the ownership of major broadcast news outlets is changing hands, the FCC is always going to be a central, powerful force, no matter who's president.
And circling back one more time to TikTok, even if the politicians sign off on the sale, that doesn't mean it's actually doable, does it? The national security part is key.
It's paramount. The really hard part isn't getting the political nod. It's the engineering and the governance structures you need to actually cut off Chinese control, especially if ByteDance keeps a minority stake, maybe around 20% as reported.
So that 20% isn't just symbolic.
Not at all. It means there have to be absolutely ironclad, auditable firewalls ensuring that stake gives ByteDance zero operational influence, zero algorithmic input, zero data access. The political okay was just getting to the starting line. The real race is the execution, the governance, the audits, the tech rebuilds on Oracle's cloud. It's like this huge ongoing operational tax to prove you're complying with U.S. security rules.
Okay, let's talk money for a second. There's this narrative floating around that because Larry Ellison has deep pockets, tech money makes the financials easy. We should probably challenge that, right?
Yeah, we definitely should. Having cash helps cushion the initial purchase, obviously, but it doesn't magically erase the massive debt problem they'd be inheriting, particularly from Warner Bros. Discovery. We're talking over $35 billion in gross debt. And importantly, their bonds have been downgraded to junk status.
Why is that junk status's label so important if the buyer has money anyway?
Because it means borrowing costs. The interest they have to pay on that huge pile of debt are much higher. The market sees them as a riskier bet. So financing a combined Paramount-Warner isn't just about writing the check for the purchase. It means taking on this really complex, expensive debt structure right away. Plus, you still have the costs of running the old, declining cable parts of the business, the legacy cable drag.
So it's not just buying assets, it's buying liabilities too.
Huge liabilities. It makes the whole financial integration incredibly tricky and complicates the due diligence process immensely.
And this whole saga is unfolding against this backdrop of, well, a massive political balancing act. David Ellison says they don't intend to politicize the company, but then you look at the surrounding context, the signals, it's hard to ignore.
Yeah, the sources really point to this strange, high-stakes internal dynamic. You've got Larry Ellison, known for his closeness to Trump and GOP donations historically, although he backed Clinton way back. And then you have his son, David, donating almost $1 million to Joe Biden's 2024 campaign.
That's quite the hedge.
It's smart politics, maybe, but it creates this huge perceived risk around editorial independence.
Yeah.
How can newsrooms operate freely with those kinds of conflicting signals at the very top?
And it's not just donations. There was also that appointment of a conservative-leaning ombudsman to oversee CBS News coverage right after the Paramount deal went through. That seems to directly undercut any claims of pure neutrality.
Exactly. When you see government figures involved in brokering media ownership deals, when you see these kinds of appointments, it just fuels the perception that these media outlets might be captured politically. And this is really important for you, the listener, to consider. If the journalists, the writers, the creators start to believe the combined company is politically compromised,
They could walk.
they could walk, or the brand reputation could just tank. The cost of losing credibility and talent could easily outweigh any potential business synergy they're hoping for.
Okay, let's try and wrap this up. What's the main takeaway here? It feels like the success of this whole potential empire isn't really about the cool content or the piles of cash. It comes down to something less visible.
Totally. It hinges on these really difficult to build, almost invisible things. Governance firewalls, legally binding antitrust rules, maybe forcing them to sell off parts or limit distribution, and that completely verifiable separation plan for TikTok. It's about proving they can actually manage the operational complexity and meet all the regulatory demands needed to truly fuse Hollywood and Silicon Valley. That's the real test.
So for you listening, as you watch this unfold, what's the big question? If these potential new media giants can't convincingly show that CBS and CNN will remain editorially independent, and if they can't guarantee a sort of news neutrality for TikTok's incredibly powerful algorithm, are they actually building a stable content machine for the future?
Or are they just concentrating the main channels of political influence in American life into fewer hands? That really is the question to keep asking.
And the place to watch.
Keep an eye on those audit reports, the details of the governance structures, especially around separating the TikTok data. That's where the real fight for control and for credibility is going to play out over the next few months.
Thanks for listening. Follow us for daily insights into world affairs, and don't forget to like, comment, and share.